All right, good morning, everyone. Hope you're well, or good afternoon for a lot of you, I think. Thanks so much for joining us, and very happy to be collaborating with Transform Nutrition on this really interesting initiative. All right. Okay. Before I get started, I'll just let you know what the structure of the presentation is going to be. I'll give you a brief overview of the broader study or the broader initiative that this work fits into, and describe the objectives and methods of our social network analysis study. Then delve in some detail into the results of that study. I'll present a few conclusions and some opportunities or considerations that arise out of the results. And finally, we hope to have quite a bit of time for discussion and questions. So why are we interested in research networks? So the World Health Assembly targets are instrumental for identifying primary knowledge gaps and priority areas for action and decision making. And across West Africa, the prevalence of these 6 WHA indicators for maternal, infant, and young child nutrition, they remain high. So to address these nutrition challenges, a strong research network is really needed to deliver context-specific evidence to inform decision-making, whether it's on programs or policies, but specific to the region. So in response to this need, Transform Nutrition West Africa undertook this systematic mapping review. The objectives were to identify and catalog existing peer-reviewed literature on WHA indicators. We intend to identify gaps in the West African region and inform decision-making. The literature search was done on Medline, looking from 2009 to 2017, applying detailed search syntaxes for each of the WHA targets across a number of categories. So the results of the systematic map helped to identify trends and gaps in the published literature, to identify priority areas going forward. Now this is a living database, so the first update was actually done in March 2020, although these results will be based on the initial search. And more details of these results for the broader study can be found online on the Transform Nutrition website. We'll share the link with you later. Now, if we go a bit more specifically into this sub-study, we included the social network analysis component of the study to identify and understand the existing capacity excuse me, and leadership on WHA targets research present in the region. So the sort of the rationale behind this, right? So the high quality knowledge and evidence is critical for supporting effective and coherent programs and policies. So strengthening research networks can help support collaboration, cross-pollination, sharing of best practices and innovation. Understanding the structures of these networks can provide critical information to development partners on the structural strengths and weaknesses of the research network. So an understanding of which researchers and institutions are well connected and highly collaborative, that provides clues as to who are the thought leaders, who can help mobilize knowledge and galvanize researchers around a set of evidence-based solutions, while also understanding which researchers and institutions are somewhat less connected. That provides critical information on where to prioritize developing and strengthening communities of practice. So the specific objectives of this social network analysis component is to understand the network structures and the interrelationships between researchers who are publishing on WHA targets in West Africa and their positions in the network. So we look at, or we ask, who are the key people driving research publications in the region, and which are the institutions, where are they based? And that helps begins to answer what institutions we should specifically target for increased collaboration and research. In addition, we're interested in understanding the equity of partnerships in research about WHA targets in West Africa. So for instance, are local researchers more or less central to the research network than northern researchers? And to what extent, what is the extent of collaboration between North and Northern or West African or other regional academics? And then what's the current level of collaboration between Francophone and Anglophone researchers, which is of course important in West Africa? So the methods employed here, our approach is social network analysis. Here, what social network analysis does is it examines the social relationships between a set of actors that combined make up a network. We think of these relationships as connections or ties or links. The data we have consists of 333 peer-reviewed publications that met the search criteria on problems, programs, and policies related to each of the WHA targets in the West African region. These were downloaded from Medline. We limited the search to English and French language publications and those that were published after 2009, which was the kind of a key moment in the timeline, as that was the launch of the Sun movement, and up until 2018. Although, as I said, the database has recently been updated, this analysis will look at the publications up to 2018. We used UCINet social network analysis software to do this analysis. We looked at two different types of networks, the co-authorship networks and also affiliation networks, so the affiliations of the authors. The network data is valued, so that means that multiple collaborations or multiple instances of co-publishing will show up as a higher value link. The way we defined co-authors was only the first 10. So if there's any more than 10 co-authors on a particular publication, the final ones dropped out. And we didn't treat authors differently based on the order of the listing of their names. Just for simplicity's sake. We defined affiliation as the most recent affiliation listed for the author in case there was more than one over the time of the author's publications record. And then when there were multiple departments or centers associated or sort of under a university or an institute, we aggregated those to be consistent across all of the affiliations. The language was based on the official language of the Authors Institute, not on any sense of what the author themselves, their language skills or anything like that. Okay, so delving into the results, we have the network of co-authors publishing in the field of nutrition focused on West Africa since 2009. It consists of 1,321 unique authors who've published a total of 333 peer-reviewed publications that met our search criteria. And as you can see, pretty consistently, except for a little blip in 2015, the number of authors increases up to 2016, as does the number of papers. When we break down characteristics of authors' affiliations, we can see that 51% of authors are affiliated with a West African institute, and 18% of author affiliations are Francophone, while 71% are Anglophone. So the first network I'll show you is the co-authorship network. Here, I have nodes colored by affiliation language. So authors that are affiliated with a Francophone, with an Anglophone institute are colored pink, Francophone would be colored blue, and anything else would be gray. And the link thickness denotes value, or the number of times two authors have collaborated. So when you see the thick black lines, that means that there's been multiple collaborations or co-authorships in that particular relationship. Now, one of the sort of first things that you might notice looking at this network is that it's highly fragmented. So there's chunks of authors that are not connected to anyone else, just connected to each other. There's actually 140 subcomponents or clumps of different actors, clumps of different co-authors. The main component, you can see there, is the component with the most co-authors connected, and that includes 336 authors. The network is characterized by low density of connections. So only 0.6% of all the possible links between researchers are present. If we further analyze the network structure, we can assess the density of connections within specific groups. So specifically, we look at groups of authors according to which continent or region their institute is based in. And then also, just to clarify, we separate West Africa from other regions in Africa. And also we look at density according to the institute's working language. What we find is there's a strong tendency towards homophily, which is to say that there's a tendency towards linking to others within your same group based on language, less so related to region. So the indicator we use for homophily is called an EI index. So where a -1 is perfect homophily, where you only link to people within your group. The EI index score for language group is -0.83. So while for authors sharing a continent, it's only -0.3. So a much lower tendency towards homophily based on continent, but quite a high one based on language.